John, a 34-year-old construction worker from Denver, had always believed that marriage meant loyalty and respect. For 8 years, he stood by his wife, Stephanie, supporting her even when her two sisters, Jessica and Vanessa, constantly interfered in their relationship. On what was supposed to be a simple family road trip to a wedding in Montana, John's trust was shattered. Stephanie and her sisters, tired of what they called his dependence, carried out a cruel plan they had been preparing for months, abandoning him at a gas station nearly 200 miles from home. The first thing John noticed wasn't the sound of the car pulling away. It was the silence that followed. A silence so heavy, it pressed against his chest harder than the chill Montana air. He stood on the cracked concrete of the gas station lot, clutching a styrofoam cup of burnt coffee. The snow-dusted wind cut across his face, but what stung deeper were the words that lingered in his ears. "Walk out before I embarrass you, old man." Stephanie's voice, sharp, mocking, still echoed as the taillights of her sister's SUV faded into the horizon. Jessica and Vanessa were laughing in the front seat, their silhouettes framed by the red glow. Not a nervous laugh, not a moment of, "just kidding." No, this was deliberate. They wanted him stranded. They wanted him humiliated. For a moment, John couldn't move. His body was still, like a soldier frozen on the battlefield, unsure if the shots had really been fired. He blinked, half expecting the car to circle back, the way pranks sometimes softened into reconciliation. But the road stretched empty, a long gray ribbon vanishing into endless pine trees and snow. John Mason was 51 years old. 12 years of special forces had carved discipline into his bones, but retirement had turned him into something simpler, a construction foreman in Denver, husband, provider. He wasn't rich, but he was steady. He wasn't flashy, but he was reliable. 8 years ago, that had been enough for Stephanie. Or so he thought. Now, standing in that Montana gas station, he felt every year of his age. The cold wind seemed to whisper, "You've been discarded." The gas station itself was a lonely outpost, 2 flickering overhead lamps, a convenience store that smelled of oil, cigarettes, and reheated burritos. Beyond it stretched wilderness, flatlands broken by jagged mountains, coated in sheets of ice and snow. Montana could make a man feel small on a good day. On a day like this, abandoned without warning, it made him feel invisible. John looked down at his phone. No missed calls. No messages. He hesitated before dialing Stephanie. 1 ring. 2. Then voicemail. Her voice, bright and sweet in the recording, was a cruel contrast to the venom she had spat just minutes ago. He didn't leave a message. Not yet. Instead, he tried Jessica's number. Straight to voicemail. Vanessa's, same. The message was clear, they hadn't forgotten him. They had chosen this. He replayed the moment in the car. Stephanie had been scrolling on her phone, whispering with Jessica. He'd asked what was so funny. Jessica smirked. Vanessa glanced at him through the rearview mirror with that smug grin she always wore when she knew something he didn't. Then Stephanie turned, her voice cold as a blade. "Maybe you should stretch your legs, John. Grab some coffee." He hadn't argued. Maybe part of him wanted a break from their giggles, their private little jokes. He'd stepped out, grabbed a drink. When he came back, the SUV door was locked. Stephanie rolled down the window just enough to smirk. "Walk out before I embarrass you, old man." Then they were gone. Tires crunching over snow. Laughter trailing into the night. John's chest tightened. He wasn't afraid of being stranded. He had survived firefights, deserts, jungles. He wasn't afraid of cold or hunger. What shook him was the intent. His wife, his partner of nearly a decade, hadn't just left him behind. She had humiliated him. She had let her sisters strip away his dignity for sport. Humiliation is a different kind of wound. It doesn't bleed where others can see. It festers in silence. Inside the convenience store, a teenage clerk chewed gum behind the counter. His eyes flicked up from a cracked phone screen, uninterested. "Bus station around here?" John asked. His voice came out steadier than he felt. The kid shrugged. "Not really. Closest is like Billings. 100 miles east." John set the coffee down, barely touched. "You got a phone book?" "Taxi service. Doubt anyone's drivin' out here this late," the clerk mumbled. "Maybe in the morning." John's jaw clenched. He wanted to snap, to bark an order like he would have years ago in uniform. But those days were gone. The world didn't bend to his authority anymore. He was just a middle-aged man in a flannel jacket, abandoned by his wife, asking a teenager for help. He stepped back outside. The cold slapped him across the face. His boots crunched on ice. He looked down the road where the SUV had vanished. For the first time in years, he felt something he hated, helplessness. He sat on the curb, pulling his jacket tighter. His mind spun through possibilities. Hitchhike. Risky in this weather. Walk. Impossible in this terrain. Wait until morning. Dangerous. And then, slowly, the humiliation hardened into something else. Something darker. Anger. Not the explosive kind that led to shouting matches. No, this was colder, more deliberate. The kind of anger that simmered in silence, that bided its time, that plotted. John had been trained to survive hostile environments. What he hadn't expected was that the most hostile battlefield of his life would be his own marriage. He didn't know it yet, but this gas station, this moment of abandonment, was the beginning of a war. Not with bullets or fists, but with evidence, strategy, patience. A war of betrayal and revenge. The night deepened. John finally managed to book a bus ticket from a town 20 miles away. A passing trucker agreed to drop him off near the route. The ride was cold, the bench seats hard, but John barely noticed. His mind was no longer on the humiliation. It was on the reckoning to come. Because one truth had crystallized in that Montana night. Stephanie had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And John Mason wasn't a man who forgot. Long before the gas station betrayal, before Montana's empty roads and biting wind, there was a night filled with warmth and laughter. Denver, 8 years earlier. John Mason had been dragged to a neighborhood barbecue by a coworker. He didn't want to go. He was the kind of man who kept to himself outside of work, preferring quiet evenings with books or workouts in his garage. But fate rarely announces itself. That night, fate wore a summer dress and a smile that disarmed him instantly. Stephanie. She wasn't the kind of woman John expected to fall for. 10 years younger, sharp-tongued, and glowing with the kind of confidence that made everyone turn when she walked into a room. Where John was steady, she was unpredictable. Where he was disciplined, she was spontaneous. Opposites attract, or at least, that's the story John told himself. She laughed at his dry humor, teased him about his serious demeanor, and within weeks, they were inseparable. John thought he'd found balance, a spark to his steadiness. But what he didn't see then was the shadow cast behind her smile. Stephanie came as a package deal. 2 sisters, Jessica and Vanessa. From the beginning, John noticed their glances. They never said it outright, but it lingered in their tone, their smirks, their whispers when Stephanie wasn't looking. Jessica, the eldest, was icy, calculating. She had the sharp eyes of someone who measured people like tools in a toolbox, deciding which could be useful and which should be discarded. She sized John up in silence the first night they met, then leaned into Stephanie's ear with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Vanessa, the youngest, was different. She didn't analyze, she mocked. Every comment John made was a chance for her to roll her eyes, to mutter a sarcastic jab under her breath. Special forces, huh? So basically a gym teacher with better gear, she had once said, smirking over her wine glass. John laughed it off back then. Soldiers learned to brush off petty insults. He thought they'd warm to him over time. He was wrong. What John never realized, or perhaps never wanted to admit, was that Stephanie's bond with her sisters wasn't just close. It was suffocating. They weren't 3 individuals. They were a unit. A pact forged in childhood, sharpened by hardships John knew little about. Their loyalty to one another was absolute, and anyone outside the circle was a guest at best, a threat at worst. And John was never family. He was tolerated. He was temporary. At first, Stephanie shielded him from it. She'd laugh at her sister's jabs, telling him not to take it seriously. That's just how they are, she'd say, brushing it off like swatting away a mosquito. They'll come around. And John, lonely, aging, hopeful, wanted to believe her. He told himself their snide remarks were tests. That over time, his reliability, his devotion, would earn their respect. But respect never came. Instead, their hostility only sharpened as the years passed. It began subtly. Invitations where John was, accidentally, left out. Family trips where there was suddenly no room for him in the car. Holidays where Vanessa and Jessica bought Stephanie extravagant gifts, then handed John token items, a mug, a discount tie, as if to remind him of his place. The message was clear. He wasn't one of them. And slowly, the poison seeped into Stephanie too. John remembered one evening, 3 years into the marriage. They were at Jessica's house for dinner. A storm was rolling in, thunder shaking the windows. Jessica poured wine, Vanessa curled up on the couch, and Stephanie was radiant in the glow of sisterly laughter. John had made a joke, something harmless about the storm knocking out power. The room went quiet. Vanessa snorted. Jessica arched an eyebrow. Stephanie smirked. "Don't embarrass yourself, John." It was said lightly, casually, but the sting dug deep. For the first time, the woman who once defended him now joined the chorus. That night, lying awake beside her, John stared at the ceiling. He told himself it was nothing. That marriage meant compromise. That Stephanie's love outweighed her sister's cruelty. But in hindsight, he would remember that night as the first crack in the foundation. Why did they despise him so? Maybe it was because he was older. Maybe because he was too ordinary, too grounded, while they thrived on chaos and control. Maybe they resented the way he pulled Stephanie's attention away from them. Or maybe, just maybe, they hated him because he didn't bend. John wasn't loud, but he was firm. He didn't worship them the way others did. He didn't flatter, didn't seek approval. And for women who thrived on dominance, his quiet resistance was intolerable. So they made a pact, unspoken but understood. If Stephanie wouldn't leave him on her own, they'd make her. That pact reached its climax years later, in Montana. But the seeds had been sown long before. Every smirk, every jab, every time Stephanie echoed her sister's contempt instead of defending him. By the time John realized what had happened, it was too late. He wasn't just married to a woman. He was entangled in a war with 3. Back at the Montana gas station, sitting on the curb with cold air biting his skin, John thought about all of this. The barbecue where they met. The mocking laughter. The way Stephanie's eyes had slowly learned to mirror her sister's. It all led here. And now, for the first time, John wasn't asking why. He was asking how to make them pay. The air in Montana was thin, cold, and cruel. John Mason sat alone in the rental car, staring at his reflection in the windshield. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The humiliation still burned. Stephanie, Jessica, Vanessa. 3 women laughing while he stood like a fool in front of strangers at that gas station. For a man who had survived ambushes overseas, who had seen friends buried in unmarked graves, this betrayal cut deeper than any bullet ever could. And it wasn't the laughter that broke him. It was the realization. He had been living in enemy territory for years, never knowing he was already marked. Most men, broken by such betrayal, would walk away. They'd sign papers. They'd drink themselves numb. They'd start over. But John Mason was not most men. 12 years in special forces had taught him many lessons. The most important. Revenge is not loud. It's patient. It's precise. So, instead of exploding, John went quiet. The kind of quiet that makes predators nervous. That night, while the sisters celebrated his humiliation with cocktails in their motel room, John opened his laptop in the silence of his own. He began to plan. Not with rage. Not with drunken promises. But with the same discipline he once used to dismantle enemy networks overseas. Step 1 was information. Every war begins with intel. John had always been meticulous. Stephanie once teased him for it, calling him paranoid when he updated firewalls, changed passwords, and checked credit statements monthly. But paranoia is only a flaw until it saves your life. John had quietly built a digital archive over the years. Bank records, emails, copies of property deeds, even private messages Stephanie had long forgotten about. He hadn't meant it for revenge, it was habit. Now, it became his arsenal. First discovery, Jessica. On the surface, she was the successful one. A polished realtor, expensive suits, the one who looked down her nose at John like he was beneath her. But beneath the veneer, John saw the truth. She was drowning in debt. Maxed out credit cards. A second mortgage hidden from her husband. Commission checks already promised to cover overdue balances. And in her desperation, she had blurred lines, altered paperwork, pocketed extra fees, even misled clients. Nothing large enough to draw federal heat, yet. But John knew one thing about House of Cards schemes. They don't need to be toppled. They just need a little push. Then Vanessa. The youngest. Reckless, smug, the one who mocked his military past like it was a punchline. John's files painted a different picture. DUI arrests swept under the rug by family favors. A secret relationship with a married co-worker. Leaked photos on a private forum that could destroy both reputations. Vanessa prided herself on her freedom. But freedom becomes a cage when the right chains are pulled. And then Stephanie. This was the one that twisted the knife. Because even after everything, John realized, he still loved her. Somewhere beneath the venom, the betrayal, the cruel smirk at the gas station, there was the woman he once held under Denver's summer stars. But love doesn't erase war. Her secrets weren't as messy as her sister's. No fraud, no arrests. She had played cleaner. But John knew her weakness wasn't what she'd done. It was who she'd become. Stephanie lived for image. The radiant one, the admired one, the woman who glowed brightest in the room. She fed on attention, validation, applause. And that meant her destruction wouldn't come from police reports or courtrooms. It would come from silence. From stripping away the spotlight until she stood alone, unseen and forgotten. John closed the laptop. The plan wasn't complete, but the skeleton was there. Phase 1. Gather proof. Phase 2. Isolate the sisters from each other. Phase 3. Dismantle everything they valued, reputation, security, power, until the laughter that haunted him turned into screams they couldn't escape. It wouldn't be fast. It wouldn't be easy. But it would be surgical. The kind of revenge that left no fingerprints. No trail back to him. Just 3 women staring into the ruins of their lives, wondering how everything collapsed. The next morning, John checked out of the motel. He didn't call Stephanie. He didn't leave a note. He didn't argue. He just disappeared. Because the best revenge doesn't announce itself. It waits. It builds. And when it finally strikes, the victims never see it coming. Denver, Colorado. The glass towers downtown reflected the early morning sun, each one gleaming like a promise of success. Among them, Jessica thrived, or at least, she pretended to. Her Instagram fed the illusion. Designer heels, champagne brunches, open houses where she posed in front of luxury properties she didn't own. She was the sister who made it. The one who smirked at John like he was beneath her. But every empire looks solid from the outside. Inside, Jessica's walls were already crumbling. John knew this because he had the files. He had her bank statements, her forged signatures, her double deals. In special forces, he had learned a truth about enemies. You don't need to fire a bullet if you can make them pull the trigger on themselves. He began small. Anonymous. Silent. Jessica's inbox received an email one morning. No sender name. No subject line. Just a single PDF attachment. Inside, copies of 2 fraudulent contracts she thought she had buried. Ones that, if seen by the wrong eyes, could cost her not just her license, but her freedom. No message. No demand. Just evidence. Jessica froze when she saw it. She checked her office door, her windows, her phone. Panic rose in her throat. Because this wasn't random spam. Whoever sent it knew. 2 days later, another envelope arrived at her office. Printed documents this time. The same contracts, stapled neatly, dropped off without a return address. Her assistant found it on her desk. "Hey Jess, looks like somebody forgot to sign this for you." Jessica's hands shook so badly she spilled coffee across her blouse. She called her husband that night, her voice low, tight with nerves. "Eric, if anyone ever asks about the Martin property, you don't know anything, okay? Just say you don't know." Eric paused. "Jess, what did you do?" "Nothing. It's nothing. Just trust me." But her tone betrayed her. And once doubt enters a marriage, it spreads like wildfire. John watched from the shadows. He didn't need to confront Jessica. He didn't need to argue. He just needed to tighten the noose, one silent inch at a time. Next step. Clients. Through a throwaway email account, John leaked hints of Jessica's misconduct to 2 former buyers she had cheated. A concerned citizen, pointing them to irregularities in their contracts. It didn't take long. One client stormed into her office, waving paperwork. "You told me these fees were standard. You pocketed thousands from me. Jessica stammered, trying to soothe, but word traveled fast in real estate circles. Denver's market was competitive, and rivals were always hungry for blood. Her reputation began to wobble. Whispers started. Deals fell through. At night, she couldn't sleep. She scrolled her emails in the dark, sweating, terrified another file would appear. One did. This time, it wasn't contracts. It was a single photograph. Her, drunk, leaning against her married coworker in a hotel lobby, her lipstick smeared. The angle was grainy, but the implication was sharp as a knife. Jessica dropped her phone. Her hands trembled. The room spun. Because whoever this ghost was, they weren't just in her finances. They were in her life. Watching. Collecting. Waiting. Meanwhile, John was calm. Detached. To him, this wasn't cruelty. This was balance. For every smirk she threw at him, for every word where she spat, loser or nobody, she was now paying the debt. And he wasn't done. 2 weeks later, the collapse came. Jessica arrived at an open house, $1 million listing, her chance to salvage her name. She wore her best smile, her sharpest heels. But as she greeted the first potential buyer, something strange happened. He didn't shake her hand. He looked her dead in the eye and said, "I heard you're being investigated. Is this even legal?" Her smile faltered. What are you talking about?" Behind him, another client whispered to their spouse, "That's her. The realtor with the fraud case." Jessica's chest caved in. Her world spun. She excused herself to the bathroom, locked the door, and pressed her back against the cold tile. Her empire was gone. Her carefully constructed image, shattered. From across the street, inside a nondescript sedan, John Mason watched her crumble. For the first time since the gas station humiliation, he felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. Jessica Mason, the ice queen, the flawless sister, was finally cracking. But this was only the beginning. Because John's war wasn't against one sister. It was against all three. And next was Vanessa. If Jessica was the ice queen, cold and calculating, then Vanessa was fire. The youngest sister. The wild one. While Jessica built her career and Melissa clung to her marriage, Vanessa burned through life like a fuse, drinking, gambling, chasing thrills, and never cleaning up the ash she left behind. To outsiders, she was fun. The kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a bar, the kind who laughed too loud and lived too fast. But John knew the truth. Behind the lipstick and the laughter was a woman drowning in debt, chasing the next high because the silence afterward was unbearable. And now, she was his next target. The bait. John didn't need to plant false evidence with Vanessa. She carried her own poison. What she loved most was gambling. Blackjack tables in Black Hawk, the flashing slot machines, the late-night poker rooms where she thought she was smarter than everyone else. She wasn't. And John had the receipts to prove it. Through his silent digging, he found Vanessa's trail of IOUs. Credit cards maxed. Payday loans. Text messages to loan sharks who didn't care about excuses. One, in particular, stood out. $17,000 owed. Due in weeks. No payment made. John smiled. Perfect. The whisper. One night, Vanessa sat at a velvet poker table, sipping her fourth vodka tonic, when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. One message. How's the $17,000 debt going? Clock's ticking. She frowned. Looked around the casino. Who the hell? Another buzz. Better be careful. Your husband doesn't know, does he? Her stomach dropped. Because no one was supposed to know. She swallowed hard, grabbed her chips, and cashed out early, stumbling into the night air with shaking hands. The turn of the screw. 2 days later, Vanessa received a manila envelope at her doorstep. Inside, screenshots. Her texts to the loan shark. Her bank statements. Her credit card debt. And a single sticky note, handwritten. Confess, or be exposed. She tore the papers up, stuffed them in the trash, and poured herself 3 glasses of wine to numb the panic. But deep down, she knew, whoever was behind this wasn't bluffing. The cracks spread. Her husband, Ryan, was the type who valued image. A corporate guy with crisp suits and a spotless reputation. He tolerated Vanessa's recklessness because she looked good on his arm. But debt? Scandal. That was different. And Vanessa knew if Ryan found out, it wouldn't just be divorce papers. He'd bury her socially, financially, and legally. So she did what she always did when cornered. She spiraled. More drinking. More late-night casino trips. More bad decisions. And John was there, every step of the way, feeding the fire. The public humiliation. It happened on a Thursday night. Vanessa staggered out of a casino at 3 a.m., too drunk to stand, when two men approached her. Loan sharks. You got our money, one asked, blocking her path. I just need time, she slurred, fumbling with her purse. The second man smirked. Time's up, sweetheart. They didn't hurt her. They didn't need to. One snapped a photo of her, mascara smeared, clutching her purse like a lifeline, fear etched across her face. By the next morning, that photo was in Ryan's inbox. Courtesy of John. The collapse. Ryan confronted her that night. $17,000, Vanessa? Loan sharks? Do you have any idea what this does to me? To us. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She begged, pleaded, swore she'd change. But Ryan's face was stone. This marriage is over, he said. And for the first time, Vanessa realized there was no charm, no laugh, no drink strong enough to save her. John's satisfaction. From the shadows of Denver, John watched it unravel. Jessica had her empire burned to ash. Vanessa was left exposed, humiliated, abandoned. Two sisters down. One to go. Melissa, the oldest, the one who played mother hen, and judged him with pity instead of scorn. She would fall too. But unlike Jessica and Vanessa, Melissa's fall would be personal. Because John remembered something the others didn't know. Melissa's secret. And secrets, John Mason believed, were the sharpest weapons of all. Melissa, the eldest, the so-called responsible one. Where Jessica wielded power and Vanessa burned through chaos, Melissa tried to play the role of glue, the one who held the family together. She was calm, soft-spoken, the type who baked cookies for church potlucks and carried tissues in her purse. The world saw her as the good sister. But John remembered. He remembered the night Melissa wasn't so good. The memory that never faded. It was the winter of 1993. John was 17. Melissa was 21. Their parents had gone out, leaving the three sisters and John at home. That night, Melissa caught John sneaking out with his jacket zipped up tight. He had a black eye. A split lip. She stopped him in the hallway. What happened? She asked. John, too ashamed to admit he'd been jumped by older boys, muttered, nothing. But Melissa pressed. And finally, he told her. How they cornered him. How they beat him. How they called him worthless. Melissa looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. You probably deserved it, she said, walking away. John never forgot. The others mocked him too, but Melissa's betrayal, the one who was supposed to care, cut the deepest. And now, 30 years later, he would return that wound tenfold. The secret John dug up. Melissa had a secret. One no one else knew. While her husband, Daniel, paraded her as the perfect wife, John's digging revealed a crack in her halo. 2 years ago, Melissa had an affair. Not just a fling, a months-long, messy entanglement with a man she met through church. John found the emails. The hotel receipts. The whispered messages she thought were deleted forever. He didn't need to fabricate anything. Her own choices would destroy her. The first strike. It began with a letter. Left in Melissa's mailbox, typed on plain white paper. Daniel deserves to know the truth. Affairs don't stay buried forever. Melissa's hands trembled as she read it. She shredded it, told herself it was nothing. But the second letter came a week later. This time, with screenshots of her emails. Confess. Or I confess for you. Her blood ran cold. Because she knew, if Daniel ever discovered the truth, her carefully built life would implode. The pressure mounts. Melissa tried to ignore it. Tried to smile through family dinners, choir practice, Sunday services. But John tightened the screws. Anonymous texts. Printed photos slipped under her windshield wiper. Whispers in her voicemail. Tick-tock, Melissa. Secrets rot. Sleep fled from her nights. Her hands shook when she poured her coffee. Daniel noticed. You okay? He asked one morning, brushing her arm. She forced a smile. Just tired. But inside, she was unraveling. The explosion. The final blow came on a Saturday afternoon. Daniel opened their mailbox to find a thick envelope addressed to him. Inside, everything. The emails. The hotel receipts. Proof Melissa had been unfaithful. Melissa walked into the kitchen to find Daniel sitting at the table, the papers spread before him. "Is it true?" he asked, voice trembling with rage. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Daniel stood. His face was ash. "This marriage is over." And just like that, Melissa's perfect mask shattered. John's reflection. From the shadows, John watched as Melissa's world collapsed. Her husband gone, her reputation in ruins, her sisters broken and scattered. He felt no pity, no regret. Because in his eyes, justice had finally been served. Jessica, the manipulator. Vanessa, the reckless flame. Melissa, the false angel. Each had been stripped bare, their weaknesses turned against them. And John Mason, the boy they mocked, the man they underestimated, had orchestrated it all. The final note. But as John sat alone in his apartment, a glass of bourbon in hand, he caught his reflection in the window. For the first time, he wondered. Had he won? Or had he simply become what they always accused him of being? Worthless, cruel, broken. The silence pressed heavy against him. And in that silence, a chilling thought grew. Maybe revenge wasn't an ending. Maybe it was a curse. One that doesn't stop once you start it. The silence after the storm. John thought it would feel different. That once the last sister fell, once Melissa's world crumbled like Jessica's and Vanessa's before her, peace would finally come. But peace never came. Only silence. A silence so heavy it followed him from the streets of Denver to the stillness of his apartment. A silence that whispered in the corners of every room. He poured another bourbon. The amber liquid trembled in his hand. The first haunting. It began with small things. A voicemail with no sound but heavy breathing. An envelope slipped under his door, empty but smelling faintly of lavender, the same perfume Melissa wore. A photograph of his younger self taped to his windshield, eyes scratched out. At first, John thought it was paranoia. That he was seeing shadows where there were none. But then came the night he woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in his hallway. He grabbed his gun, stormed through the apartment, only to find nothing. The windows locked. The doors bolted. And yet, the faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered. Jessica's brand. The ghosts of the living. John had destroyed their lives. But he hadn't destroyed them. Jessica, Vanessa, Melissa, they were still out there. Broken, but breathing. And broken people, John knew better than anyone, could be dangerous. The message. One morning, John opened his mailbox to find a single slip of paper. Handwritten, jagged letters. "We were sisters. But you're nothing. And nothing doesn't stay hidden forever." No signature. But John knew. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was war. The twist of the knife. The irony clawed at him. For years, he had been the hunter. Patient. Calculating. Ruthless. But now, the hunter was being hunted. Every creak of his floorboards felt like a warning. Every whisper of wind through his window sounded like laughter. The sisters weren't just victims anymore. They were predators learning from the man who had taught them how to hate. The cliffhanger. That night, John sat in his darkened living room, gun across his lap, the city humming outside. He thought of the past. He thought of the scars. And he thought of what might be coming. For the first time in decades, John Mason was afraid. Not of what he had done, but of what was about to be done to him. And as the shadows shifted in his apartment, he realized something chilling. Revenge doesn't end. It multiplies. The gathering. Jessica lit her last cigarette in a motel room on the outskirts of Denver. The same motel where she and her sisters once plotted their scams against John. But this time, it wasn't about money. It was about blood. Melissa sat on the bed, her hands trembling as she clutched a folder of photos. John outside his apartment. John buying groceries. John at the shooting range. Vanessa paced the room like a caged animal. Her once luxurious hair now cropped short, her eyes burning with something darker than rage. For the first time in years, the three sisters were united. Not in greed, not in lies, but in vengeance. The plan. "We don't kill him outright," Jessica whispered, her voice sharp as glass. "No. That's too easy. He made us suffer piece by piece. We do the same." Melissa hesitated. Her collapse weeks earlier had left her shaken, haunted by John's smirk as she broke down. But Vanessa leaned in, her voice venomous. "He thinks he ended us. He didn't. We're still breathing. And as long as we're breathing, he'll never sleep in peace." They clinked their glasses together, not a toast to victory, but to the storm they were about to unleash. The first move. 2 nights later, John returned to his apartment. The door was ajar. He moved in silently, gun drawn. But nothing seemed disturbed. No signs of forced entry. No missing items. Until he stepped into his bedroom. On the wall above his bed, scrawled in thick red paint, were the words, "Welcome home, soldier." And pinned below it, a photo of John in uniform, taken 20 years earlier. A photo he'd never shown anyone. The shift. John's heart pounded. How had they gotten it? Who gave it to them? For the first time, he wasn't the one pulling strings. He was the puppet. And the sisters were holding the wires. The promise. Back in the motel, Jessica flicked her lighter, setting the edge of another photo aflame, John smiling with his old Special Forces unit. The fire reflected in her eyes as she whispered, "He thinks revenge is his story. Let's show him it's ours." The sisters leaned closer together, 3 shadows merging into one. This wasn't the end of John Mason's war. It was the beginning of theirs. The silence before the storm. For 3 nights, John slept with his gun on the nightstand. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of shadow, every hum of the refrigerator felt like a threat. But nothing came. And that was worse than an attack. Because John knew, the sisters were out there, watching, waiting. The strike. On the 4th night, it happened. John returned from a late run. The front door wasn't ajar this time, it was locked. Secure. But when he stepped inside, the smell hit him. Metallic. Sharp. Blood. He moved fast, clearing the rooms with military precision. Living room, clear. Kitchen, clear. Bedroom. His chest tightened. The bedspread was soaked. And lying across it was his dog, Max. Slaughtered. Pinned to the wall above the body was another message. "You protected us once. Now who protects you?" The handwriting was unmistakable. Jessica's. The hunt. John buried Max behind the apartment building before sunrise. His hands shook as he packed his weapons, knives, ammo. He wasn't going to sit and wait anymore. He went hunting. 4 days, he trailed the sisters. He saw their motel, the cars they switched between, the false names they used. But every time he closed in, they slipped away. Like ghosts who knew the streets better than he did. The trap. One evening, John returned home to find a package on his doorstep. No label. No sender. Inside, neatly folded, was his old Special Forces beret. The same one he thought he'd lost overseas. Tucked in the fabric was a phone. It rang the moment he touched it. He answered. Jessica's voice crackled through. "You taught us well, John. You made us survivors. Now it's your turn to survive us." The line went dead. And for the first time in years, John Mason felt fear. The sisters' oath. Back in the motel, the 3 women sat in silence. The blood on Vanessa's hands hadn't fully washed off. Melissa traced the outline of a knife on the table. Jessica finally spoke. "No more games. No more warnings. The soldier bleeds next." And as the motel neon light flickered outside, their pact was sealed. Broken man, dangerous man. John Mason hadn't cried in years. But when he put Max in the ground, something inside him shattered. And something darker took its place. The sisters thought they were predators. They forgot. He had trained predators before. Preparation. The next morning, John stripped his apartment bare. Curtains torn down. Furniture pushed to the walls. Tripwires stretched across doorframes. He built kill zones out of his own living space. Every shadow now held a trap. He wasn't waiting for them anymore. He was inviting them. The bait. John sent a single message through an old burner phone, one only Jessica would recognize. Basement. 5th and Cherry. Midnight. You want me? Come and finish it. No threats. No begging. Just a location. It was bait. And the sisters couldn't resist. The sisters prepare. In their motel room, the women sharpened blades, loaded rounds, braided their hair back like they had before raids years ago. Melissa laughed softly. He thinks he's leading us into a trap. Doesn't he realize, he taught us how to make traps? Jessica's eyes burned with fury. We go. But tonight, we don't just kill him. We erase him. The basement. The old storage basement at 5th and Cherry was cold, concrete, and silent. John waited in the dark, his breathing calm, rifle steady. Midnight struck. 3 shadows slipped through the doorway. They moved fast. Silent. Professional. But John was faster. A tripwire snapped. A flare ignited, blinding them. The sisters scattered, hissing like feral animals. And from the darkness, John's voice rolled through the chamber. You think you know war, but war built me. The clash. Gunfire cracked. Metal scraped. Knives flashed in red light. Vanessa lunged first. John sidestepped, slammed her into a pillar. Melissa fired. The bullet grazed his arm, but he didn't flinch. Jessica circled, whispering his name like a curse. This wasn't a hunt anymore. It was war. And neither side planned to leave alive. The ambush turns deadly. The flare light still burned red against the damp basement walls. Concrete pillars threw jagged shadows across the floor. Vanessa staggered back from the pillar John had slammed her into, blood dripping from her forehead. Melissa hissed in rage, firing wildly into the darkness. But John wasn't there. He was already moving. Silent. Calculated. A wire snapped. Melissa's foot triggered a suspended chain of bricks. They came swinging down, smashing into her shoulder with bone-shattering force. Her scream cut through the chamber. John speaks. From somewhere in the dark, John's voice echoed. You thought you could strip everything from me. You thought I'd roll over. But I'm not your prey. I'm the storm you unleashed. His voice wasn't angry. It was steady, cold. That terrified them more than the traps. Vanessa's rage. Vanessa, shaking the blood from her eyes, screamed. He's just a man. A broken old man. She charged again, knife glinting in the flare's dying glow. John let her come. At the last second, he sidestepped and slammed her wrist against the wall. The knife clattered. Before she could recover, he shoved her into another tripline. A row of sharpened pipes dropped from the ceiling. One pierced clean through her thigh. Her howl was almost inhuman. Jessica's poise. Jessica didn't scream. She didn't panic. She just watched. Her eyes never left John's shadowed figure as he stepped into the faint red light. Blood trickled down his arm, his shirt torn, but his posture was unbroken, a soldier back in his element. Jessica whispered to herself, almost smiling. Finally, the real John Mason. The standoff. Melissa writhed on the ground, clutching her shattered shoulder. Vanessa sobbed, pinned against the wall, impaled through the leg. Jessica stood alone, calm, steady. She raised her gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Just you and me now, John, she said softly. Like it always should have been. John leveled his rifle. His breathing slowed. Time felt frozen. Silence before fire. For a moment, the basement held nothing but the sound of dripping water and the ragged breathing of the wounded. One shot would end it. One heartbeat would decide who walked out. The flare sputtered, dying, plunging them into deeper red shadows. And then, a gunshot split the air. The shot. The basement shook with the crack of the gun. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Vanessa let out a ragged gasp. Blood sprayed across the wall. The bullet had torn through her shoulder, but it hadn't been John who fired. Jessica had shot her own sister. Betrayal revealed. Vanessa stared at Jessica, eyes wide, voice trembling. Why you? Shot me. Why? Jessica's face was calm, almost serene. Because weakness disgusts me. You were already slowing us down. Melissa, clutching her shattered arm, screamed. You monster. She's your sister. Jessica didn't even look at her. Her gun never wavered from John. John's fury. John's chest rose and fell with fury. You turned on your own blood. Just to win? Jessica smirked. No, John. I turned on my own blood to prove to you. I'm the only one worthy of standing against you. Her voice was low, seductive, filled with venom. Face it. Out of all of us, you've only ever respected me. The duel. The dying flare hissed, plunging them deeper into crimson shadow. Only John and Jessica remained standing, predator and predator. John's rifle barrel leveled. Jessica's pistol steadied, finger curled on the trigger. Neither flinched. Only one of us walks out alive, Jessica whispered. John's jaw tightened. Then let's finish this. The unexpected shift. But just as both pulled their triggers, the basement door above burst open. Harsh white light poured down the stairs. Shouts echoed. Police! Drop your weapons. The sisters' earlier gunfire had drawn them in. Chaos. Jessica snarled, spinning toward the light, firing upward. Bullets sparked off the stairwell. John didn't hesitate. He dove forward, tackling Jessica to the ground. Her pistol skittered across the concrete. They struggled in the red shadows, her nails clawing, his fists landing heavy blows. Last words of the dying. Vanessa, bleeding out on the floor, whispered through her tears. She'll kill you, John. She'll never stop. Melissa sobbed, trying to drag herself away, leaving a trail of blood. The basement burns. The flare finally died, leaving only the blinding white beams of police flashlights cutting through the smoke. Officers shouted commands, unsure who the true threat was as John and Jessica fought like demons in the dark. And then, one of them screamed. He's got a grenade. The grenade revealed. Time slowed. All eyes locked on John's blood-stained hand. There it was, a dull, olive-green grenade, pin still intact. Sweat ran down his temple, dripping onto the metal shell. Police screamed from the stairs. Drop it. Drop the grenade. Jessica's lips curled into a savage grin, even pinned beneath him. Oh, John, if you pull that pin, we both burn. The mind game. John's voice was low, steady, terrifying. You think I survived 12 years in special forces without learning how to bluff? Jessica's eyes flickered, just for a second, doubt cutting through her mask. Melissa whimpered from the corner. Please, John, don't do it. We'll all die. Vanessa coughed blood, whispering hoarsely. He's not bluffing. Police standoff. The stairwell filled with SWAT, rifles trained, red lasers dotting John's chest. But none dared fire. If he had even the chance to yank the pin, the whole building would vanish. Put it down, an officer bellowed. Now. John ignored them. His eyes stayed locked on Jessica's. This was no longer about police, no longer about escape. It was predator versus predator. Jessica's breaking point. Pinned beneath him, Jessica's grin faltered. Her voice shook for the first time. You wouldn't. John leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. You've already forgotten what I am. The cold steel of the grenade pressed against her cheek. The twist. Then John did something no one expected. He released her. The grenade clattered onto the concrete between them. Jessica froze, staring at it like it was a live snake. John stood tall, blood dripping down his arm, rifle hanging loose. He raised his voice to the cops. You want her? She's yours. But you'll never cage me. And then he stepped backward, into the darkness of the basement's far tunnel, vanishing into shadow. The aftermath. Jessica scrambled to her knees, eyes darting to the grenade. Hands trembling, she snatched it up, only to realize it was hollow. A training dummy. John had played her, played the police, played everyone. Her scream echoed in the basement. John! The legend grows. By the time the officers swarmed forward, the tunnel was empty. No trace of John remained. Only blood, chaos, and the shattered sisters. To the world, he was now more than a fugitive. He was a phantom. A soldier of shadows. A man the law could never hold. And somewhere in the darkness, John whispered to himself, this isn't over. It's only the beginning. The tunnel's secret. John's footsteps echoed as he moved deeper into the basement tunnels. The air was damp, choking with mildew, rats scattering as he passed. He'd memorized this labyrinth during the siege. Every exit. Every choke point. It wasn't just escape, it was strategy. Behind him, the distant sound of boots thundered closer. SWAT teams sweeping in. But they were too late. At the far end of the tunnel, hidden behind rusted pipes, John pushed open a steel hatch that led into the sewers. The city above was alive with chaos, sirens, helicopters, breaking news. He melted into the dark water below. Jessica rebuilds. Back in the basement, Jessica knelt on the concrete floor, clutching the hollow grenade in white-knuckled hands. Her chest rose and fell in furious waves. Melissa crouched beside her, whispering, "He fooled us. He fooled everyone." Vanessa spat blood, coughing. Her voice rasped like gravel. "No. He exposed himself. He's bleeding. He's desperate. And desperate men make mistakes." Jessica's head tilted back, wild laughter spilling out. The sound was manic, echoing against the walls. Then she rose, slowly, with a predator's grace. "We don't wait for mistakes," she said. "We create them. The war spreads." By morning, John's escape was on every screen. News anchors called him the Phantom Soldier. Politicians screamed for his capture. Civilians whispered his name like a legend, half in fear, half in awe. But for John, it was no myth. It was survival. He stitched his wounds in a dirty motel bathroom, each needle bite a reminder. He was alive. He was still in control. Jessica's oath. Meanwhile, Jessica and her sisters regrouped in a hidden safe house. Maps covered the walls. Photos of John, his face, his past, his family. Every scrap of intel they could dig up. Melissa pointed to one photo. Denver. That's his ground. His roots. He'll go there. Vanessa's eyes burned with venom. Then Denver will be his grave. Jessica pressed the hollow grenade into the table, the metal clink sharp in the silence. Her lips curved into a slow, murderous smile. No police. No backup. He belongs to us now. And when we find him. She leaned in, whispering. We don't kill him fast. We break him piece by piece. John's vow. That same night, John stood on a hill overlooking the glowing city lights. The weight of war pressed heavy in his chest. They thought he was running. They thought he was hiding. But in his heart, John knew the truth. He wasn't prey. He was the hunter. And he would take the fight to them. Jessica's first move. Denver slept under a cold midnight sky. Streetlights flickered, the city quiet. Too quiet. But Jessica and her sisters weren't resting. They moved like wolves through the suburbs, black SUVs rolling slow and silent. Their target, John's old contacts. The men who trained with him. The families who once sheltered him. Anyone who might give him refuge. Melissa kicked down the first door. A retired sergeant jolted awake, hand reaching for the shotgun under his bed. Too late. A silencer coughed, and his body slumped. Vanessa scrawled a bloody message across the wall. You can't hide. They didn't just want John dead. They wanted him broken. John watches. From a rooftop across the street, John's scope followed every move. He saw the muzzle flash. He saw his old comrade fall. For a split second, his heart clenched. But he didn't move. Not yet. This wasn't carelessness. This was calculation. He let Jessica's crew think they had control. He let them burn the night with their violence. Because he was already 3 moves ahead. The trap. An hour later, Melissa and Vanessa regrouped at their SUV, laughing cruelly, blood still fresh on their gloves. Jessica climbed in last, tossing the hollow grenade onto the dashboard like a trophy. Denver will bleed, she whispered. Then the SUV wouldn't start. The engine turned once, twice, then silence. Melissa frowned. Battery. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. No. This isn't. Boom. The vehicle erupted into fire, the blast ripping through the street like thunder. Flames swallowed metal, glass rained down in shards. Screams pierced the night. The hunter returns. From the rooftop, John lowered the detonator, his face lit by the burning wreck. His voice was low, almost a growl. You came for my family. My friends. Now I'm coming for yours. His shadow vanished into the dark as sirens closed in. Jessica crawled from the wreckage, face torn and bloody, hair scorched. Her sisters screamed in agony beside her. She looked up, eyes blazing through the fire. And in that moment, her rage burned hotter than the flames. Out of the fire. The SUV was a blazing coffin. Steel bent, glass melted, screams of her sisters filling the night. Melissa's legs were crushed under twisted metal. Vanessa's body was scorched, her voice a raw rasp. Jessica dragged herself out, hands blistered, face cut open by glass. Her breath was ragged, every inhale filled with smoke and rage. On the cracked asphalt, she raised her head and screamed into the Denver sky. John. That name tore from her throat like a curse, echoing down the empty street. The vow. Paramedics arrived too late. Police too cautious. Jessica stood in the flashing red and blue lights, blood streaking her jaw, refusing medical aid. Her sisters clung to life, barely breathing. She looked at the fire one last time, and then spoke to the night. Every soldier you trained with, every friend you still have, I'll burn them all. And when you have nothing left, John, I'll make you watch me bury you alive. It wasn't anger anymore. It was obsession. The silent war. 2 days later. Denver buzzed with news of gang violence, the media clueless about the real war unfolding in the shadows. But John knew. He had eyes everywhere. And so did Jessica. Every alley, every bar, every safe house. Both sides were hunting, setting traps, bleeding the city slowly. John mapped their moves on his wall, string and photos weaving a web of death. Jessica drew her maps in blood, crossing out faces as her people struck. They weren't soldiers anymore. They weren't even enemies. They were shadows fighting for dominance. The message. One night, John returned to his apartment. His door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were off. On the table sat a single envelope. Inside, a photo. Melissa, barely alive, hooked to hospital tubes. Vanessa, bandaged head to toe. And across the photo, in blood-red marker, "Next is your son." John's hands clenched around the picture. For the first time in years, his pulse spiked with fear. Not for himself, but for the one person Jessica should never have discovered. A normal life. John's son, Ethan, was 19. A college freshman in Denver, majoring in computer science. Unlike his father, Ethan never knew war. He lived in libraries, coffee shops, dorm parties, a world John had fought to give him. John kept Ethan at a distance. Not because he didn't love him, but because he feared this exact moment. That someday, John's past would bleed into Ethan's future. And now, that day had come. Jessica's shadow. Jessica didn't storm in guns blazing. She was too smart. She watched Ethan for a week. From the back of coffee shops. From a car parked across his dorm. From the shadows of the campus gym. Every smile Ethan gave his friends, every careless laugh, was fuel to the hatred burning in her chest. Innocent. Untouched. Just like my sisters used to be, before John destroyed them. Her whisper curled into venom. The first strike. Thursday night. Ethan left a study session and walked to his car. The parking lot was half lit, wind pushing dead leaves across the ground. He didn't notice the black SUV idling 2 rows away. Didn't notice the woman inside, eyes locked on him, nails digging crescents into her palms. As Ethan started his car, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Hello. A pause. Then a low, broken voice. Your father can't protect you forever, Ethan. The call cut off. Ethan froze, the phone trembling in his hand. Something primal inside him whispered, run. John's discovery. Back at his safe house, John pinned another photo to his wall, Ethan at age 12, smiling with a fishing rod. It was the only personal photo he allowed himself to keep. Tonight, he stared at it longer than usual. The phone rang. Ethan's voice, panicked. Dad, someone just called me. They knew my name. They said you couldn't protect me. Silence. John's jaw clenched. It had begun. The war becomes personal. John knew what this meant. Jessica wasn't just coming for him. She was coming for bloodline. And the unspoken rule of their world had just been shattered. Family was off limits. John's voice was low, steady, but every syllable dripped with fury. Ethan. Listen carefully. Pack a bag. Don't talk to anyone. Don't stay in the dorm. I'll come for you tonight. Ethan hesitated. Dad, what's going on? John's reply was ice. A ghost from my past is coming, and she won't stop until one of us is dead. Ethan on the run. Ethan shoved books into a duffel bag, hands shaking. He glanced around his dorm room, posters, half-finished ramen cups, a laptop still glowing with half-written code. It all suddenly felt disposable. Every creak in the hallway made his heart pound harder. He kept hearing the voice from the call. Your father can't protect you forever. Jessica's patience. Across the street, Jessica sat in her SUV. She could see Ethan's window glowing. Her fingers traced the trigger guard of the pistol resting on her lap. But she didn't move. Not yet. Killing Ethan immediately would satisfy the rage in her veins. But she wanted John to watch. She wanted the old soldier to crumble, to taste helplessness. So she waited. John's arrival. 2 hours later, headlights cut across the parking lot. A black truck rolled up, engine quiet. John stepped out. His movements were sharp, controlled, but beneath the surface, a storm brewed. He scanned the shadows like a predator, hand brushing the concealed weapon at his side. Jessica's breath caught. After all these years, she was finally watching him again, not through memory, but in flesh. The man who had ruined her life. Her whisper fogged the glass. Soon, John. You'll bleed for them. Father and son. Inside the dorm, Ethan's door swung open. John filled the frame, older, heavier with years. But his eyes carried the same lethal clarity Ethan had only glimpsed in childhood. Dad. Ethan's voice cracked, relief mixing with confusion. John put a hand on his shoulder. No time. We leave. Now. Ethan stammered. But. No buts. Grab your bag. Move. The old commander had returned, and Ethan obeyed without question. Jessica's play. As John and Ethan walked out, Jessica's SUV remained in shadow. Her finger hovered over her phone. One tap. Somewhere down the block, an engine rumbled to life. Not hers, but the first of her hired guns. She smiled. This wasn't about killing John tonight. This was about testing him. Watching how he moved, how he protected. And when she learned his rhythm, his weaknesses, that's when she would strike for real. The chase begins. John's instincts screamed. He pushed Ethan down behind the truck, eyes scanning rooftops and alleys. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Too staged. Ethan whispered, Dad, what's happening? John's reply was a growl. We're being hunted. Shadows closing in. The night air was heavy, thick with silence. John crouched low behind his truck, pulling Ethan close. His eyes scanned every angle, the rooftops, the empty sidewalks, the streetlights flickering. Then he heard it. The faint crunch of boots on gravel. Multiple sets. His grip tightened around the pistol hidden beneath his jacket. Dad. Ethan whispered, voice trembling. John's answer was razor-sharp. Stay down. Do not move unless I say so. Jessica's signal. Across the street, Jessica leaned back in her seat, phone still in hand. She pressed one button. A pair of headlights flared at the end of the block. Another set blinked on from the opposite side. Her hired guns moved like wolves, surrounding, boxing John and Ethan into a kill zone. Jessica whispered to herself. Dance for me, soldier. Let me see if age has slowed you down. The ambush. The first mercenary stepped from the shadows, a rifle gleaming under the streetlight. Drop the weapon, old man. John didn't answer. His eyes flicked, counting angles, measuring cover, calculating. Another voice from the alley. We just want the kid. Walk away, and you live. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. His voice cracked. Dad. John cut him off with a whisper. On my signal, crawl under the truck. Do not look back. Predator instincts. The mercenary took one step closer. That was all John needed. A flash, one shot. The man's rifle clattered to the ground. Chaos exploded. Gunfire tore through the parking lot. Sparks flew as bullets ripped into John's truck. Ethan scrambled beneath the vehicle, hands trembling, ears ringing from the deafening shots. John moved like a ghost, firing, shifting, using every inch of cover as if the years in special forces had never left him. Jessica watching. From her SUV, Jessica leaned forward, eyes wide. Her lips curled into a twisted smile. He hadn't slowed down at all. Every movement was precise, merciless. And it thrilled her. The longer John fought, the sweeter his eventual fall would be. "Fight, John," she whispered. "Because when I take everything from you, I want you awake enough to feel it." Blood and fire. Smoke and sparks filled the lot. 2 mercenaries were down, another crawling wounded behind a dumpster. But more were closing in. John reloaded, voice calm even in the chaos. "Ethan, now, move." Ethan crawled out from under the truck, legs shaking. John grabbed his arm and pulled him into a sprint, weaving between concrete pillars as bullets cracked around them. They weren't escaping tonight. This was only the beginning. And Jessica knew it. A narrow escape. The alley swallowed them whole. John's arm was firm around Ethan's shoulder, guiding him through trash bins and broken fences until the gunfire faded behind. Ethan's chest heaved, lungs burning, every nerve screaming in panic. But John's breathing was steady, almost eerily calm. Finally, he pressed Ethan against a wall, scanning the rooftops above. Silence. No pursuit, for now. "Dad," Ethan gasped. They almost killed us." John's reply was clipped, cold. "They weren't trying to kill us. Not yet. They wanted to scare us into running." Jessica's voice in the dark. A vibration in John's pocket, his burner phone. He froze, then answered. Jessica's voice oozed through the line, silky and venomous. "Well done, John. 12 years out of the field and you still move like a predator." A pause, then a laugh that chilled the air. "But how many more times can you protect him before your body gives out?" Ethan's eyes widened. He could hear her voice, too. "Who is she?" he whispered. Jessica continued, her words sharp as blades. "You took something from me once. A debt I've waited too long to collect. Now, I'm going to take everything from you." Slowly. The line went dead. Ethan's breaking point. Ethan's voice cracked. "Dad, what the hell is happening? Who is she? Why are people trying to take me?" John stared at him, the same steel gaze Ethan had grown up resenting, now terrifying him more than ever. "You're not ready for that answer," John said. His tone was final, but his son's glare cut deeper than any bullet could. "You can't keep shutting me out," Ethan snapped, his voice trembling. "I deserve to know why my life is suddenly worth dying for." A hidden past. John didn't reply. Instead, he pulled Ethan deeper into the alley, toward a rusted steel door. He knocked 3 times in a coded rhythm. The door opened. A man in his 60s, scarred and cautious, stepped into the light. "Jesus, John," the man muttered. "I thought you were done with this life." Ethan looked between them, confused. "Who is he?" John's jaw tightened. "An old ally. Someone who owes me. And the only man who might keep you alive." Jessica watching again. From across the city, Jessica poured herself a glass of red wine, replaying the ambush footage captured by her mercenaries' body cams. She paused the frame on John's face, his eyes burning with fury, his arm shielding his son. Her fingers traced the image on the screen. "Not yet, soldier," she whispered. "I'll let you win these little battles. Because when I rip Ethan from your hands, the pain will taste so much sweeter." Inside the safe house. The steel door slammed shut, locking out the chaos of the city. The safe house smelled of gun oil, dust, and old wood, a relic of another war. The scarred man who opened the door eyed Ethan curiously. His face was marked by deep lines and a jagged scar across his jaw. He looked like a man who had spent decades cheating death. "Name's Marcus," he muttered. "Your old man saved my life in Kabul. Twice. Guess I owe him a roof." Ethan, still reeling, sat at the edge of a cracked leather chair. His eyes flicked from Marcus back to John. "You've been keeping secrets my whole life. Now some assassin queen knows more about us than I do." John didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a pistol from his jacket and began stripping it down, piece by piece, his silence heavier than words. "Marcus and the truth." Marcus broke the tension with a dry chuckle. "Kid, you think your dad's just some cranky old man who hates Wi-Fi and social media?" He leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. Your father was a ghost. Special Activities Division. Black Ops so buried the Pentagon pretends they never happened. Ethan's breath caught. He looked at John, searching for denial, but John said nothing. Marcus leaned back. And Jessica? She was one of ours, too. Brilliant. Dangerous. But she crossed the line. Ethan's hands trembled. She knows me. She called me by name. Why? What does she want with me? John's confession. For the first time, John's hands stilled. He looked at his son, eyes dark, voice low. 12 years ago, we raided a compound. Jessica's husband was inside, a financier for terror cells. He refused to surrender. I pulled the trigger. A pause. She swore revenge. Not on me. On my family. Ethan's stomach dropped. So this, all of this, is because of you? John's jaw clenched, but he didn't flinch. Yes. And because of me, you'll have to learn how to survive. Jessica moves the pieces. Across the city, Jessica sat at a long table surrounded by her mercenaries. On the wall, a map of Denver was riddled with pins and red string. She pointed at a cluster of photographs. Ethan's high school. His friends. The places he used to hang out. Forget the father. He's predictable. But the boy. He's soft. He doesn't trust John. That's our way in. A mercenary smirked. You want us to grab him again? Jessica shook her head slowly. Her eyes gleamed with cruel patience. No. We let the boy come to us. Fear breeds mistakes. Curiosity kills faster than bullets. Ethan's rebellion. Back at the safe house, Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey. John took one, silent as stone. Ethan stood at the cracked window, staring at the neon glow of the city. His chest tightened. Anger, betrayal, fear, all tangled together. When his father finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Ethan pulled out his phone, the one John had told him to destroy. His fingers hovered over the search bar. One thought burned in his mind. Who is Jessica, really? And why am I the key to her revenge? Ethan's secret search. The glow of the phone screen lit Ethan's face in the dark safe house. His father's steady breathing rumbled from the other room, the sleep of a man who had learned to rest even in war zones. Ethan typed quickly. Jessica Caldwell, Denver, Special Forces, Black Ops. Dozens of results flickered. News clippings, blurry photos, whispers in online forums. Most were dead ends. But one link caught his eye. A private blog. No author. Just a symbol, a red serpent biting its own tail. He clicked. The message. The screen went black for a moment. Then text scrawled across in stark white letters. You shouldn't be here, Ethan. Ethan froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. Another line appeared. Your father murdered my husband. You deserve the truth, not the lies he feeds you. A video thumbnail loaded. His hand trembled as he tapped it. The video. The shaky footage showed a dusty compound in Afghanistan. Men with rifles shouting, muzzle flashes in the night. Then, John appeared, younger but unmistakable. Jessica's voice narrated over the chaos. Your father didn't kill a terrorist. He executed an unarmed man. My husband. He laughed when I screamed. The camera zoomed in on John dragging a bloodied man from a tent. A single gunshot rang out. The screen went black. Ethan's stomach lurched. His father's image, brutal, merciless, burned into his mind. The hook tightens. The blog updated again. Come meet me, Ethan. One conversation. That's all I ask. I'll give you the truth your father never will. An address appeared. Union Station. Midnight. Come alone. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Every instinct told him it was a trap. But his heart, his anger, whispered louder. Jessica watches. Across the city, Jessica leaned back in a leather chair, a glass of wine in her hand. On her laptop, she watched Ethan's every keystroke in real time. Her lips curled into a smile. He's coming, she murmured. The boy wants to believe. And belief is the sharpest weapon of all. The mercenary at her side grinned. You sure he won't bring the old man? Jessica's eyes glinted. Ethan is already halfway mine. All it takes is one more cut, and he'll bleed out his father for me. Ethan's decision. Back in the safe house, Ethan slipped the phone into his pocket. He glanced at his father, still asleep, then at Marcus, sharpening a knife by the table. His chest burned with a mix of rage and confusion. He whispered under his breath, "I need answers, and if Dad won't give them, she will." He slid silently toward the door. The lock clicked. The night swallowed him whole. The station. Union Station at midnight was a cathedral of shadows. The grand hall echoed with the hollow sound of Ethan's footsteps. Neon signs flickered weakly against marble walls, painting the emptiness in a sickly glow. Ethan pulled his hood low, scanning every corner. His heartbeat hammered as if it wanted to flee his chest. On a bench beneath the old clock tower, Jessica waited. Elegant. Calm. A predator disguised as prey. Her lips curled into a smile the moment their eyes met. The first exchange. "Ethan," she said softly, as though greeting an old friend. "You came. Just like I knew you would." He stayed 10 feet back, fists clenched. "Say what you have to say. Then I'm gone." Jessica tilted her head, studying him. "You have your father's eyes, but not his coldness. That's why you're here, because deep down, you already doubt him." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You showed me a video, but I don't know if it's real." Jessica's smile widened, like a knife finding flesh. "Oh, it's real. And it's only the beginning." The folder. She slid a manila folder across the bench. Inside, photographs. Military reports stamped classified. Witness accounts, all implicating John in unauthorized killings. "Your father built his reputation on blood," Jessica whispered. "But not enemy blood. Innocent blood. He wasn't a hero. He was a butcher." Ethan's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. The names. The faces. It was too much. His voice cracked. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," Jessica leaned closer, her perfume wrapping around him like smoke, "you deserve the truth. And because I need you. Together, we can end the monster your father really is." The temptation. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him. His father asleep back at the safe house suddenly felt like a stranger. Jessica's voice was a whisper in his ear now. "You don't have to decide tonight. Just keep the folder. Read it. Let it open your eyes." Her hand brushed his, gentle, maternal, manipulative. "You're not alone anymore, Ethan. You have me." The watcher in the shadows. Neither of them noticed the figure crouched in the mezzanine above, hidden in the dark. John. His eyes locked on his son, his expression unreadable. He hadn't slept. He had followed. And now, as he watched Jessica's poison seep into Ethan, John's hands curled into fists of steel. Inside him, the soldier stirred again. John remained hidden above the station floor, his breathing controlled, his soldier's instincts fighting the father's heart. He could see Ethan's confusion, the hesitation in his son's posture. Jessica's poison was working. John whispered under his breath. "Not like this. I can't lose him like this." But before he could act, Jessica rose from the bench, brushing Ethan's shoulder as if sealing an unspoken deal. "Think about what I've shown you," she said, her voice smooth as glass. Then she melted into the shadows, leaving Ethan clutching the folder. Back at the safe house, the silence between Ethan and John was unbearable. Ethan sat with the folder spread across the table, his hands trembling over each photograph, each classified report. "Dad." His voice cracked. "Tell me they're lying." John stood in the doorway, his face hard as stone. "I did what I had to do. Things you'll never understand. Orders no soldier should have been given." "That's not an answer." Ethan exploded, slamming his fists against the table. "Were they innocent? Were they even armed?" John's silence was the only answer. Days later, Jessica made her move. She leaked the files to the press. Within hours, John was branded a war criminal. The city became a net tightening around them, journalists, bounty hunters, even government men who once praised him. John realized what Jessica wanted, not just revenge. She wanted Ethan to turn against him completely. And unless he could prove the truth, he would lose his son forever. John made a choice, to reveal everything. He took Ethan to a storage locker, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside, dusty crates of VHS tapes, mission logs, and handwritten notes. He loaded a tape into an old player. On screen, helmet cam footage. Afghanistan. The mission Jessica claimed showed John murdering civilians. But the full footage told another story. The civilians were insurgents, hiding weapons, about to ambush. John's voice on the tape. Hold your fire. Confirm before engaging. Seconds later, the ambush was sprung, and John's quick decision saved his unit. The truth hit Ethan like a hammer. Jessica, she cut the footage. John nodded grimly. She's been rewriting history. And now she's rewriting you. They tracked Jessica to an abandoned rail yard, where she waited with armed men. But John didn't come for a gunfight. He came with Ethan. Jessica's eyes gleamed when she saw them. Ah, the prodigal father and the broken son. Tell me, Ethan, whose side are you on? Ethan stepped forward, the folder in one hand, the VHS tape in the other. You tried to make me hate him. You almost did. His voice sharpened. But the truth isn't in your lies. It's in the full story. And I've seen it. Jessica's smile cracked, the mask slipping. You're a fool. Both of you. John raised his chin. No. Just a father and son. Stronger than your vengeance. The standoff erupted into chaos. Gunfire thundered, shadows exploded into sparks. But together, John and Ethan fought side by side, the old soldier and the young fighter, finally in sync. When the dust settled, Jessica lay cornered, her empire in ruins. John leveled his pistol at her. Jessica laughed bitterly. Do it. Kill me. Prove I was right about you all along. For a long moment, silence. The world held its breath. Then John lowered the gun. No. I'm done letting the past own me. He turned to Ethan. She doesn't matter anymore. We do. Ethan kicked the folder into the dirt, letting the wind scatter Jessica's lies into the night. Weeks later, the headlines faded. Jessica vanished, her network dismantled. John lived as a ghost now, but a freer one. On a quiet morning, father and son sat on the porch of a cabin far from the city. For the first time, they laughed, not as soldier and heir, not as liar and judge, but simply as John and Ethan. Ethan turned to his father. You know, after everything, I still don't know who you really are. John smiled faintly, eyes on the horizon. Maybe I don't either. But we'll figure it out. Together. The sun rose. And for the first time in years, it felt like a beginning, not an ending.